Okay guys, thanks very much for coming. This is the 2016 RIBA Presidential Hustings. Some would call it the highlight of the biennium. Others, clearly not here, don't know just how good and exciting it can be. We've got three candidates this time. Gender split last time was perfectly down the middle because there were two candidates. This time, the split isn't so great. We've got three men. But what role does diversity have in either the profession as it emerges, or indeed what it says about itself at this particularly critical juncture? We were saying earlier that the RIBA is a 19th century institution. As such, it carries great august traditions with it. Are those the sort of traditions which are going to sustain us into the 21st century? These are all very, very critical debates that are being had in the RIBA often, but not very publicly. Presidential hustings are a great opportunity to flesh some of those out, particularly as each of you have a vote, and there's three people in the room who like that vote. So we're going to hear from, in alphabetical order, Ben Derbyshire, then from Alan Jones, then from Andrew Salter, the three candidates. We're going to hear from them 5 minutes each on their manifesto, their pitch, and then we'll go to questions from the floor for 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how the flow goes. Does that sound okay? I've had some straightforward tips from Portland Place about what the candidates should be talking about. They may disagree, but what you will know is that the Institute has had a strategy at the beginning of the year, emerging, I would say, sort of quite quietly and relatively slowly, but that 5-year strategy has straplines in it about being a global institute. What does that mean? Having diversity at its root of its moral and ethical cause, what does that mean? About having ethical professionals as members in the 21st century, what does that mean? And so on. But I know from having asked candidates also that because Newcastle here is the first of the hustings, so this is their tryout, please be careful with them because this is the first time out. There are 5 hustings running up to the end of June and early July when voting starts. And they, of course, are keen to know from this northern outpost, it's often referred to, we like to think of it as a secret centre of the RIBA empire, what is it that drives Northeast members to either celebrate and want to be part of the RIBA, or indeed to perhaps wrinkle their nose at the thought of the RIBA and its intransigence in supporting the very things that they do every day in this region. So there you go, there's my opening gambit. I'll set you up, Ben, and then you're off. Is that okay?
Thank you very much. So, my central premise, architects should retake their institute. And I actually just tweeted, follow me on Ben_Derbyshire.
Ben, don't look yourself.
Yeah, I'll stand this side. Architects should retake their institute and become its voice. So here's the thing. Architects do great work, not just the great architects. Lots and lots of architects do great work to improve the sustainability and the design of the built environment. But they have serious problems. £100,000 typically loan to qualify. When you get there, your salaries are averagely low by comparison with your professional peers. The Susskind book that I use here points out that societal and technological changes will completely transform the way in which society gains its technical expertise, so that the professions will be no longer needed nor wanted as in the fashion that they operate in the 20th century. Competition, as we all know, is fierce, and our influence has declined since the Second World War. As a consequence of which, architects, I contend, feel abandoned. Meanwhile, the RIBA itself has serious problems. Its credibility is pretty much rock bottom. Only 20% of you even bother to vote in this election. It has not been at all well run. It has a huge hole in its finances, which will require to be filled. You'll see an asterisk. I think Jane Duncan has made a very good start in restructuring the executive team. It has an ageing membership, decreasing diversity, slight increase in the number of women, especially younger women, but otherwise not. It's London-centric, it's inward-looking, and it tends to try to reinforce its brand, not recognising that actually the way in which it can promote architecture better is by letting 1,000 flowers bloom and allowing architects wherever and however they practice to be the means by which architecture is advanced, the central premise of the Institute itself. So the solution is architects have problems, the Institute has problems. What they need to do is they need to help to solve each other's problems. They are indeed the solution to each other's problems. So my argument is that the RIBA must ensure that its primary purpose is to champion architects to advance architecture. I have no problem with what people regard as being a contradiction, that its charter requires it to advance architecture. It can do it through architects. This illustration is from Manchester architects. Manchester architects have an extremely rich and well-resourced program of activities. Instead of the proposition that I think the culture of the RIBA has it where it regards architects as requiring to support the Institute should turn around and do it the other way and promote architects wherever they are, and promote them to become the voice of the profession. So it needs to change a lot, a very great deal. It needs to replace its bunker mentality. It needs to be collaborative. It needs to be devolved rather than corporate, and it needs to be single-minded in its promotion of architects. It needs to be all of those things, slimmer, faster. If it is, it will become richer. It needs to be more open. If it is, it will become younger and it will become more relevant. And by being collaborative, it will become more knowledgeable and innovative. I can do it because I've always been a practicing architect. I've built a successful business. I understand about management. I understand about culture. I understand about leadership. And those are all things which the RIBA itself, as an organisation of 300 people with a turnover of 20 million, needs to transform. I'm not an RIBA insider. I don't have a vested interest in it. I have been around long enough to understand the way it thinks, but I think it needs to change the way it behaves a lot. I'm grey-haired, but I still have the same passion, as you can tell. I've done it before. I did it at the Housing Forum, a membership organisation. We worked with our members, who became the voice of the organisation, and through that we doubled the membership over the 3 years of my chairmanship, and we transformed the finances of the organisation from break-even, if not loss-making, to very healthy. Over the years, the 30 years of my leadership of what was St Thompson Associates, we've innovated. We were the first with a research subsidiary. We became HDA Architects Limited, now HDA Design LLP. There are 150 of us with offices in London, Edinburgh, Manchester, and we have projects all over the UK and sometimes, but not often, overseas. So, I think I may have just about overrun. The heart of it is put architects back at the heart of the RIBA. Visit my website and vote for it. Thank you very much indeed. Gosh.
Thank you for coming. My website. You can look there and you can see who has nominated me and my experience. I am, as you can tell, from Northern Ireland. I spent 10 years in practice in London with Michael Hopkins and Partners and David Morley. So big practice there, and now back in Northern Ireland, small practice, still winning awards and being published and so on. I also teach. I do a fair degree of expert witness work, so there's a way of working and so on that I'm used to. So you can look at all that. What I'd like to do is show you this diagram called the New Architects Atlas. One of the reasons for standing was showing this to the acting chief executive of the RIBA, and he says, Alan, I completely understand what you're talking about. The problem is nobody else is saying it. That and some other things and what other people have said was the reason. So, to sort of, I like my metaphors and to use sort of illustrations. Pre-recession architectural practice is here. Imagine standing on the moon, the world of architecture. Ice cap. Yes, it's firm. Yes, we know that we can stay there, it will support us, but it's getting smaller, it's getting more crowded, and especially if you're located on the edge, as this diagram suggests. There is a more solid ground over here called New Architectural Practice. That is firmer ground, and so on. Post-recession, different skills, different ways of working, collaborating, and so on. And what we have to help those who are not already there, maybe need to know more about what's here, to move these and help these people move from here to here. The RIBA have confirmed that if you look at the overall makeup, 40,000 plus members, 10,000 of which are students with no voting right, which hopefully that gets turned in June. It wasn't supported in March. Hopefully when it comes back again it will. So students can't vote in this election at all, which I think is wrong. I say I'm a member of board and part of Jane's team that has been making these changes that Ben was referring to. I'm VP for Education. And the point is that either the organisation calls itself a 40,000 membership organisation and gives students more input, or B, they call itself a 30,000 membership. Of those 30,000, 2/3 are here. 1/3 are what I am now calling the extended profession. Over here and over here. Over here, this diagram, and I acknowledge on the website where it's from. This is all about the media and journalism and publishing and so on. We come down here into development and the building industry, design managers and so on. These are where we start to find our members now. We find them in education, research, teaching. We find them in urbanism, technology, and product development and so on. We find them in disaster relief. You'll find a lot of my nominators are here and in high-profile practice, but they're also all over here. The big, I'm trying to find another term other than big tent. Yeah? Government, etc., etc. So this sort of idea of RIBA has to understand its members and where they find themselves and so on. What I have done is started a project, a role model project. RIBA currently have 12 role models. I have currently 70 in this program called Success Through Architecture, to help people understand all the different ways that one operates as an architect. And until RIBA start to understand that, they won't start to understand how to support and be relevant to the organisation. So there are gaps. I realise there are certain areas. We have all sorts. We don't have time. And I list them on the website. I think what RIBA also has to help, both at an educational level in schools of architecture and also help the profession, is to engage with the process of design, not just the product of design. In doing that, we start to actually engage with the process of design in terms of briefing. The reputation we have, some of it is deserved, where we take what we think the clients want and we give them what we want to a certain extent. We have to actually help that longer term arrangement. And we have publications and we have processes that are already starting that. Stephen Hodder's fantastic publication that's developing into the client consultation process that you'll find in RIBA website and so on. You have other books and sources. The session we had earlier, they laughed. Not so many people know this book, How to Be a Happy Architect. it's not necessarily about awards, but it's also about sort of ethics and about values and appreciating the different forms of architect and different sorts of personality that we need to be a successful industry. So this book here, again, not relatively well known, again, looking at how to develop a more research, methodical way of working with the view that actually what we do is supported through evidence. We get our clients, like the back of the Ford Capri, the little dog nodding, yes, I understand the evidence and so on, and that gives us the creative space that we need to be the architects that we aspire to be. So that's a little bit too wordy and so on, but we need to actually move from just thinking of ourselves as designing and producing a final product to being interested in the process and problem solving. Again, one of the images that's not on the last slide, front of Harvard Business Review. Last September, design thinking is what big business is looking for. And that is what architects can do. So I'm sorry, I would like to disagree with Ben in terms of no, but in terms of you cannot replace architects and judgment with machines. And that's why architects and design thinking will continue to be needed. And we have to help this move from the traditional office to what is referred to in the diagram, this new architectural practice for the good of all. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you for all turning up. This is really, really good. It's also, I've been here a number of times before when this building was also given an award. I've been a regional chairman for RIBA South. I was also a branch chairman for Oxfordshire. I'm also vice president of membership and also chairman of Nations and Regions. I was also honorary secretary for 4 years for the RIBA. So I've been on the board for 6 years from about 8 years ago. The issue I have really is one of connection, that there are only this number. It's a good number, but when I look at when I was a regional chairman, I would have this or more for our various events and such like. And it means that we are not connecting with our membership, that we are not engaging with them, we're not communicating with them. If you ask a young architect, what does the RIBA do for you? What do you think about the RIBA that you're a member of? They don't know. They don't know what we do. And yet, when you actually mine into what the RIBA does, it's a lot. It does a lot across a massive area. We have vice presidents, education, international, and such like, covering a lot of things. We have innovation. We cover. We did actually used to be vice president of the Futures Group, which actually became Sunan took that over as a presidential role. And so we have all these areas where people are looking into with quite some depth into areas, but it never gets out of the bubble. It never actually breaks out. We don't see what they do. There's a great website, better than the corporate website we had before, but the platform is now quite rigid, quite staid. It needs more investment in the platform. We need more investment in the personnel to run these platforms, and we need to be on the desktops. We need to be actually on your breakfast table through iPads and such like. We need to engage with each and every one of you, and for those who aren't here, more than most that are here, you're motivated to turn up here. But we need to engage with every one of our members. As Vice President of Membership, I cared about all the members around the world, not just that was my role. And what we need to do is connect with each and every one of you through. We want to be, wouldn't it be great to just be able to get onto your laptop and see a discussion, and then text the members that are on the panel and ask them a question without actually going there. Now, we have members, Newcastle is a fair way from London, but so is Hong Kong, and so is California. And we've got members all around the world who are also paying membership fees who don't actually have a chance to get to London. And why would they? Why should they? We need to go out to them, and we need to make sure that we have the resources to put the mass of what we do into them. And we also need to make sure that we listen to the membership, so the membership are connected, so that we listen to what you have to say. That's what I really care about. I want to listen to what you have to say, and I want to I don't want it to be a one-way process. This has got to be a dialogue, and it's got to be a dialogue with all, not only from the 45s to 65s or beyond, in terms of an average age of 56 on council or whatever, or a membership. I want it from 25 to 45. I want to connect with all of those people, not just the ones that are here, the ones that aren't here, the mass that aren't here. That's what's important, is getting connection with you to make you feel that you are a part of it. And we have the technology now to do that. The technology is getting cheaper. We have it on YouTube. We have messaging. We can do this. And with great people like chap on the camera now. Sorry, I've forgotten your name.
John.
He's the key. People like him are the key. Resources, personnel, funding to get what we do out to the membership, and to know and listen to what the membership want from us in supporting you as a member and your practices. That's really where I'm.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Just before you do, I forgot to introduce myself. Tim Bailey, obviously in practice in Newcastle, but also one of your regional elected members on National Council, along with Nicola Watson. So, we're trying very much to get our faces out and about so that you know who to talk to. But, brief interlude there while you gather your thoughts. Neil, can I ask people to introduce themselves, because not all candidates will know you. Say
Neil Taylor from Practice Local Fulham Grounds. It's hard to disagree with anything that you say. It's always it's good stuff. But it's a bit like tinkering with the bloody deck chairs in the Titanic. I think you're all sort of so far off what the massive problems that we're facing are. And you all talk about the problems, but the profession is in a dire position. And I think the ship is sinking. And each of the points that are raised, yes, we should be communicating, yes, we should be taking a broader view towards what the nature of architecture is, yes, we should be doing great buildings, all those things. But the issue is the opportunities of the world around it. I've made a few notes, so don't forget, it's on the terrible memory. But I've been within the profession nearly the longest, except for myself, probably, about 30 odd years. And when we entered the profession, the marketplace was so different. It was a very relatively simple marketplace. I can remember speaking to a guy called Untitled Chapter. He showed me letters where they were written to ask him to do jobs. It's so different. And I think that over those 30 years, though, I blame the RIPA for actually standing over and seeing this decline. You must have experienced it. You're in practice yourself a lot. The decline in the respect that the profession gets. You've only got to go to Europe, and you're held in much higher regard. The mayor comes out to say hello to you, things like that. Here, you stood behind the building to bring bricks on top of each other. And I think those issues have led to a situation where I think there are bigger issues. I'd like to hear what your opinion is as to how it's more root and branch than it is just putting computers in or talking to project managers or just architecture in its own right, because the opportunity to create architecture is so significantly diminished by the declining role the profession has in terms of its making its voice heard. So I'd like to, the two questions are linked really. One is, how do we get ourselves back to influencing government policy, to influencing how the government procures buildings? You've got to go to PFI. The architect stands behind the builders. When the environment is our birthright. So that's the first question. The second question is to do that, we need to educate people in an appropriate way. I've been involved with education quite a lot over the years, and the courses aren't dissimilar from what I taught 35, 40 years ago. The great courses, but whether they equip the young guys to come out and address the sort of issues that they're having to address, I fear for them, in the sense of the challenges they're having to go. So I think that rather than looking at I've looked through the educational things that are going on at the moment, rather than looking at tinkering everything, haven't we got some fundamental problems? Is the university a natural place for pursuit of architecture, when the pursuit of the universities is primarily about getting 5-star research rating, whereas the profession is about many, many other issues. So it's a bit of a long-winded one, but it's a double-headed one. I think it's trying to address it, not at just plugging the holes, it's trying to make the ship really go in the proper direction.
Alan, you're Vice President of Education. Do you want to kick off on that second question, and if you can, cover the...
I held our organised a conference in Belfast at the end of March, all the heads of schools of architecture, the standing schools as it's called, and I made a presentation where I made the point that actually I believe the institutions are failing those who come onto the programmes. So for example, the first slide I had was a whole forest of hands, and I made the point that when you go into first year and you ask first year, hands up who wants to be an architect, they all put their hand up. The other way to do it is ask the question, who doesn't want to be an architect? Does anybody put their hand up? No. So what you have is currently, the stat is that 30% of those who graduate from Part 1 go on to register with ARB. It used to be 50 before the recession. Now, admittedly, one response was we have international students and so on. But it hasn't changed that much. One of the reasons I'm standing is that I was pleased to be made Vice President of Education, because I thought I'll oversee this review of architectural education that has started over 2 years ago. It's dead in the water at the minute. And part of the reason for that is the indecision about ARB. But we have to really fundamentally change and moving towards evidence-based, methodical, systematic. Those are all things that have been written out of what students are expected to do. That's not to stop creativity. That was one of the points we were discussing before the meeting. It's actually, if you don't have the respect of the people around the table in terms of your information and what you're referencing and so on, you know, it isn't about I want and all that. It is about how you present your design and being engaged with the process. So that's my response as VP Education.
Okay, thanks. Ben?
Well, yes, may I? So I'm surprised that you characterise the core of my presentation being about great buildings, because although I did say, and I believe, of course, that architects do great buildings, my central thesis is yours. My central thesis is that we, as a profession, alongside the other professions, and if you read the book that I showed and quote in my website, the Susskind's book about the future of professions, in a nutshell what it's saying is that societal changes are moving from a class-based system where people were happy to be under the doctor and happy to entrust their building project to an architect, to one where actually people get their information and get their support from an enormously wide variety of different sources in the information age. So it's about technology, but it's not about the technical aspects of technology, it's about the communication and societal influence of technology. Now, I actually think that the problem for us as a profession, alongside all the other professions, is that we are not valued in the way that we were in the past. And of course, in the post-war years to which you refer, you're quite right. You know, private practices and public practices, there are precious few of those left at all, had the work flooding in. There was a standard fee scale and there was no competition. It is a completely different world now, completely different. So the question is, what do we do about it? And, for my money, actually, to a very great extent, I agree with Alan on this. And, one of the things I'm saying to Alan is, can we find something to disagree about, please? Because I actually think, we're going to engage this 80% that, don't participate in the election more, if we can have an interesting public debate about something. But where I agree with him, fundamentally, is that there needs to be an evidence base. We need to do research. We We need to amass a body of knowledge that is more greatly valued by society, and we need to put it out there using digital media as a means to do so. Because if we don't, I fear you're right. I fear we're sunk. As to education, I think the problem is that it needs to change much faster, much faster than it is at the moment. And you know,
It's not
Alan,
changing. It's not changing at all.
okay, but
That's a shift.
there was a modest change mooted at the RIBA Council in whenever it was 3 or 4 councils ago, Alan, and even that hasn't been implemented. So, but for me, the changes should be much greater. There should be many more routes. Let me finish. Sorry, Mayor. Many more routes to qualification. Many more routes. It needs to be much more open and much more promoted to people who don't normally participate in architectural education and who are put off by the immense cost of doing so. And it needs to be much more contributed to by practice. The bridge between practice and education, between practice and research, between academic research and practice-based research needs to be built. And I think we could do it. And actually, I think we could do it by participating between the Education Committee at the RIBA and the Practice Committee in a really meaningful way. But the problem is the organisation doesn't work. It doesn't work, and nobody even knows what the committees actually do. And by the way, the working groups of experts, the housing group, the education group, have until recently, until Jane came on board, largely been ignored. They're regarded as a nuisance. These are the people who actually know what it means to practice, and what their clients and what society wants. And the executive in the RIBA, shockingly, has until quite recently completely overlooked their contribution.
I don't know what the president does.
I just want to hold that question. So you've got the benefit of a little time to think about what the president can do about these.
Well, we should have another question.
Andrew, do you want to come back
Sure.
on things?
The government needs, the RIBA should be the first advisor to the government on architecture. We need to be engaged. We need the public relations department to actually be a conduit from our expert members through to government. They need to know and have proven value of an architect's service, that it's value, not cost, and so that it's intelligent procurement. English Heritage do that. They have systems in place so that we can evaluate contractors. It's done on value. And they have something like a 50% quality, 50% cost. And you can work out the measures for a contractor. That goes right the way through. That also goes for the professional. What we need to do is ensure that the intelligent procurement processes are in place and that the government departments understand it. They do understand. They defer on the parliamentary estate, for example. They defer to having SMEs as a proportion of their consultants because they were pressured to do so. We can, as a body, and the RIBA has, pushed for that for our members. And we need to continue to be the point of first contact for the government. It used to be that we had regular contact with the government in the past, historic past. The professions tended to be denigrated in the 80s and such like. They wanted to get rid of that hierarchy, that nice ivory tower business. They didn't like it. And we need to show worth, as any product needs to show worth, but we need to sell it. As an institute, we need to sell the worth and calibrate that worth. That's the only way they're going to listen to it.
Okay.
But
Can we move on to another question?
move on to the other one. Sure.
Can I make a suggestion before you do that?
Yeah.
Questions, with all due respect to me, have a limit of a minute. And answers have a limit of a minute.
I'm just going to say
This has not got to be castrated.
I'm just going to say the same thing. So if candidates could address what they will do about it, so if we can avoid maybe what used to happen, let's talk about what can happen should prepare some answers, and what I propose is that we'll come back to and wrap up with the, as President, I will address this way. Okay, Nicola.
Yeah, sorry, I did ask Tim if I could ask this, so I'm afraid I have to go. So I'm going to be quick, and I'll ask you if it would be great, so I can. I've been on council since September, and before I was on council, I was absolutely convinced how London-centric the RBA is, and that was a really significant reason why architects in the North East felt disconnected. I have to say, my experience of being council has changed that view a little bit. I'm not convinced it is as London-centric as it was, because I've spoken to so many London-based architects, and they are equally disconnected with the organisation than we are here. But what I would like to know, I suppose I am asking, what would the President do about it? What would the President do about this region? I'm interested in this region, I mean, selfishly, this region. How are we going to get this room full of people for the next presidential hustings? How are you going to actually connect the North East region?
Okay, so quick answers. We'll go across this way from there.
Okay. I think the answer is in your hands, in a way, because if you elect me, my proposition is I would be a Trojan horse, as it were, for you all to retake your institute. I would say, internally at the institute, they're doing great things in Newcastle, they're doing great things in the North East. Let's stop protecting our brand and being concerned about whether we are saying and doing the right things in allowing the architects of the North East to promote what they contribute to the built environment in the North East. Let us endorse what they're doing, let us promote it, let us put it on our website, let us put it out in documentation, let us enhance and endorse what it is that people in the North East are doing as architects in order to improve the built environment. Because I think at the moment, the way the RIBA sees it, despite your saying it's not particularly London-centric, it expects people, even its phrase, London and the regions, implies somehow or other that there is something different about architects as between London and the regions. I think we should be saying, not how can you in the regions support us at the headquarters, we should be saying in the headquarters, what can we do to support architects wherever they are, however they practice. Alan's quite right, in all kinds of different ways, private practice, research, in industry, in order to advance architecture and improve the built environment for society.
Excellent, thank you. Alan.
Yes, as President. As I said in my sort of election statement, I think one of the issues is how London holds the budgets. It prevents, it closes down the regions. So as I suggest, what I would be doing, in the same way that it's already starting to happen internally at 66, is to allow the regions to actually start to plan for 3 years, so they can actually start to have a vision for how they can serve and support the members in their area. I think the other aspect to it all is, apologies for being ageist, but I think we do have to really seriously look at how we can reduce the average age. I think it is around 55, 56. And if we can do that and making RIBA relevant to those people, that's when we start to see the larger numbers come in.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yes, I redress the balance between, in the perception as President, redress the balance between the regions and what is known as, if you like, the centrist bubble. Not necessarily London. London has a London region. They're in a basement, or were in a basement, in the same way that others have been in small offices. They have a problem, as I've seen firsthand, when they're talking about regions, because they have this big mass, this big gravitational mass, right on top of them, quite literally in those days, that stops them. We need to let the regions grow and to be able to breathe and be supported. That's key, because it's not only just Newcastle, but you've also got Hong Kong. What do they get out of their membership? It's it's crucial that the regions have are much more dominant and have much more preeminent in terms of the whole. If we just, otherwise we will just be a council bubble, and we can't have that. You're right. There are, there is a, I can't think of the percentages straight off, of regional to national elected councillors on council. I think it's 2/3 are regionally elected. But we need to, it's the mentality of, because that's where all the administration is, that we've got to disseminate, we've got to make sure that all the regions are fully supported in all the things that they want to do, and let them grow, let them do the research, give them wings for research and support. But it is about making sure they're actually at the centre, that's where they should be.
Okay.
That's what I was telling.
Thank you. Okay, we've got another question from the floor. Yes, great.
Hi, I'm Laura, and I'm a Part 1 graduate from University of Ulster in Belfast. And I'm just wondering, like, you talk a lot about how you're going to improve education and how education isn't working. And I know that for me, and I would imagine for my fellow graduates of Ulster, like even of Northumbria here in the northeast, we do feel like sort of that REBA is kind of the big scary, enterprise in London, and it doesn't engage with students. I just wonder, like, how would you make REBA more accessible to students, especially in places like Belfast, that it's across the water. It's not the Bartlett. It's not London, but how do you make it more accessible to students, and how does the profession then become more centric on the younger generation?
Is relevant a good word? So how does it become more relevant?
Yeah. How does it become more relevant? Is that right?
Okay. So we'll go the
Let's
other way.
go the other way.
Okay. Yeah. Andrew,
When I was chairman of Oxfordshire branch, I had 50% on my small council. I had 50% students. I was encouraging students because they were the future and they had new ideas. I would like to see regional councils have more students on them, so that we engage and have more events that can engage students. But equally, it's also about being electronically engaged, to connect with students so that we can listen to them and what they have to say. So we need to have a much more even playing field amongst all our membership. So it isn't just those who are engaged or those who've been have long-term associations. Some of the best councillors I've seen at RIBA Council have been students or student members. They've been fantastic. We had fantastic contributions from them. So I welcome the day when we can have more contributions on council at the Portland Place and also at the regions, because you really are the lifeblood of the organisation, and we need to hear from you, because you are fully engaged in right the way through. You should continue to be engaged. I remember being so stimulated by seminars and such, like when I was in 5th and 6th year at School of Architecture, and then I came away and we were in practice, and all of a sudden there were no seminars. There wasn't this engagement. All of a sudden it disappeared. I thought, this is dull. This is, I miss this. I'd like to see some of that come back somehow, even on our laptops whilst we're having breakfast. But I'd like to see it so that we can get that engagement again, so it can be stimulated again. I think it's a real shame to lose that passion from when you're a student to then going into office.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Thanks. First, I'd like to point out, I don't think architectural education is, I think it can be a lot better. I don't think it's bad. I wouldn't like you to think that you've got a poor education. I think it could be, as I suggest in the election statement, what we have to do is help mould what I call the new architect, in terms of how to sit in the new island above the ice cap, and for the good of the profession. That I think young architects and early career architects have a vested interest in making it a good, strong profession. I helped organise in March of this year, the Architecture Student Network came to Belfast, and we ran an event, and the topic was Future Architecture, Future Architects. And that was about trying to discuss and get conclusions, and those conclusions then have been sent to ARB and the RIBA to give the students a voice. I mentioned earlier the motion about, I think students need to have a vote. If you're going to count their numbers in your membership quota, you need to give them a vote. Yeah, and to help the points about the council and so on are well made. Representation. I think there has to be a review. I've been saying at board, we need to get to the bottom of a review of what it is to be a student member. And it might be that there has to be a small charge. It's free at the minute. To benchmark what we do against, say, for example, the Royal Society of Chemistry, to sort of see, again, that idea of how to engage students with the profession. Very quickly, I would also mention mentoring. At the moment, the mentoring program is actually driven by the nations and regions. But actually what we find is, for example, in Belfast, the RSUA isn't. So I was actually even saying to the director there, well, we'll take it on board and start it. Because it is that engagement for the future of the profession that we need. It isn't this case of academic versus practitioner. That there are many people who actually teach and want to give back to students, and that can be 1 day a week, it could be helping to run part 3 or something like that, and we need to, instead of having this sort of gap between what practitioners do and what academics do and what students do, it's in the vested interest of everybody to be much, much closer.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I think that is something we might find we could usefully disagree about, because I actually think that there is an enormous problem in education of architecture. I think it exists in what gets called the metaphorical teaching of architecture, postulating problems for students to solve which don't actually exist in the world of practice and in the real world. And there's so much of that about that by the time students come to be employed by practices like mine, often as not, we need to start all over again. And that is a really serious problem. The winner of the JCT Student Prize wrote to me, just announced winner of the JCT Student Prize, wrote to me to say, he was inspired by my manifesto because he felt he'd got to his part 3 and he'd actually basically been mistrained. It's a very, very big and serious problem. So we could work on that maybe, but I think specifically and immediately for people who are already trained, like some of you, I think, I think there is an amusing problem in a way that you don't pay for your RIBA membership. You pay nothing, but actually you get nothing. So I agree you ought to pay a bit more, but you ought to get a whole load. You ought to get discounted products from the RIBA enterprises. You definitely should be enfranchised, to vote for council. And some on council think you should be enfranchised to vote for the president and be the president. You should have that opportunity. So I agree with all of that. I think for those of you who are not yet trained, I think programs which allow people to earn as they learn, so that you can begin to accumulate some earnings, whilst you would otherwise be accumulating debt, so that you get to 100,000 quid. I don't know what your size of your student debt is, but if you were able to start, in the old-fashioned way, Frank Lloyd Wright was articled. He worked in the practice and was enabled through an apprenticeship to become a great architect in Chicago. So I just think we've got to get back to that. It'll take a while, but I think that's all incredibly important. And I think if that were what we were doing, I think we would see education as lifelong learning. And we would stop seeing these, rather rigid and distinct phases in which, you have to get to a certain point, and you have to tick a certain number of boxes, and then you get to practices like mine, and you actually discover, I'm terribly sorry, you don't know any of the things you need to know in order to be a practitioner. Quite a problem. So we need to work on that.
I don't think we're going to disagree on that at all. I think that.
Damn it!
Come back
But that's the whole
Oh yeah, I just maybe want to make a point still while we're on the topic of education part one. What's your view on the likes of part ones not being paid for the first year out?
Sorry, my view of what?
On like unpaid internships at the moment? Do you think that the RIBA, I know in my internship for my part one, I got into a lot of debt because I was paid absolutely nothing for my part one.
Well,
And I wonder whether the RIBA can help more
which
on
way
that.
around are we going this time?
Well, is this a one-liner?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely appalling to hear what you've just said. And I think RIBA chartered practices shouldn't, and I think they're not actually permitted to ask people to work for nothing. So if your practice is a chartered practice, grass them up. That's what I'd say.
Definitely paid now.
I think the thing about, can I just say, I think our road back lies in raising the standards, the ethics of practice, and the concept of a chartered practice being more ethical. Every chartered practice should set out its ethics. It should teach. It should research. It should embark always on the prediction of the performance of the buildings that it's designing for clients, and it should measure their performance when they're finished. Those are the kinds of things and should engage in earn as you learn programs so that young architects can be articled or apprenticed or whatever they used to call it, so that you can earn some money as you learn. Otherwise, we are going to go on being an old profession.
We shouldn't dwell on that point. It's a simple question.
Yeah, we agree. I think that is illegal in RIBA terms.
Yeah.
But what we did in the RSUA, I got the student reps there to undertake a piece of research, and it was damning. And they tabled it at council. And I think that's what I would encourage the reps on RIBA council, and also because it has to be independent of the practices, to actually just demonstrate how terrible some people behave, some practices behave. And that's where, and they probably aren't RIBA chartered practices, they're probably on the fringes, maybe.
Was it?
Shop them now. We're on camera. We're on camera.
No, I think that would be difficult. We see the problem.
I think you'll find that council voted against that, voted against
Very strong.
unpaid internships. It was, I think it was Angela that was very vociferous
Yeah, it was.
in ensuring that all part one, all year-out students were paid.
Good question. Good question. Anybody got another question? Perhaps on a different topic that we haven't heard anything about. Cyril.
I was also an article pupil, so like Frank Gogh, I became quite a famous architect.
Did it work for you?
I want to issue a challenge to the new president about illustrating an exemplary president. I have a dear friend, Hugh Brown, who was a Queen surgeon. It was decades ago. The girl engaged had her hand chopped off. And a president of mine put this hand in a pail of ice, took the RBI to Hugh, and after many hours of operation, he put the hand back on. It's the first time a hand had been restored to the nations. And Hugh became president of the Surgeons Institute. And in the year of his presidency, I said to him, how are you going with work? You're president. Oh, he said, yes, terribly busy, awfully busy. He says, do you know, I've had to hold 2 meetings. He said, the first meeting he's ever had in Leeds Castle, and the ladies like that. He said, we did business. But at the end of the meeting, he said, it was suggested that we weren't doing enough for students. So he said, I arranged a second business meeting in Paris, and they did enjoy it. We all enjoyed it. He said, I had an awfully busy year. 2 meetings. Now, I think the thing is, what I would tell you, our new president, is that the surgeons tend to get knighthoods for having behaved like that. I'm promoting the old Victorian model of the president, dignity in office, and he didn't have he had a secretary, marvellous name, the secretary. And that the RIBA should return to president and secretary and organise it nearer the Victorian model. I rest my case.
Glad he's starting at the low end.
No, we're starting in the middle, Alan.
All right.
What's the question?
Well, the question is, as a challenge, would the Victorian model for the RIBA better suit the challenges of the day?
Right. How I would respond to that is I think the role of the president should change in that. I think we will take on and vote for presidents that have a big agenda and so on, and sometimes that agenda gets derailed by issues on council or whatever. But I think my experience of RIBA over the last year is that it is collegiate, in that there is the advancing architecture agreed, and so it isn't about a president starting to change the direction of the institute. Once that's been agreed with council, it should be about actually then how the executive, the permanent members of staff, and how all the various committees all pull together to actually deliver that, and so on. So it's not that the president becomes a kisser of babies and a shaker of hands, but it's about motivating and actually helping deliver what has been agreed. So that would be if that's close to the Victorian model, yeah. I think there's more than 2 meetings a year.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than 2 meetings a year. I think it's about at least 3 days a week, probably 5 days a week. And very busy. But the president is not the chief executive officer or the secretary, he's not. He is the chairman. He is the soul of the institute. He is, for his or her 2 years, it is that soul, their spirit, that is there as chair of council and representative of council during their term in office. And so really it's about that spirit that in the old Victorian sense is what they're there for. But it's at least 3 days a week and probably 5, and it's because we do a lot. £36 million turnover, but it's a chair to be working with the chief executive, to be an advisor, and to generate and pull all the VPs, all of feeling council, of understanding the mood of council, and generating a vision and an esprit de corps within the board to be purposeful towards the aims and the goals of the institute and their set agendas, and to listen to the membership as well as council to ensure that we're going in the right way. It's about feeling the spirit.
Thanks. Ben, and then we'll put a truth.
Right. So I'd say that your Victorian model relies on highly distinguished, the topmost in the profession, with their knighthoods and handles and all the rest of it, actually wanting to be the president. And I think a symptom of where we've got to is that you've got 3 fine figures of men here, but we are, to say the best of it, mid-ranking. We are not Michael Hopkins. We are not Lord Rogers. We are not Lord Foster. So I actually think it's part of the same phenomenon, that actually the Institute has come to a place where 80% of its members don't vote for the president, and in some years only one person puts themselves forward as a potential candidate, so it's a shoo-in. So your Victorian model, I think, is, to say the least of it, in present circumstances, hypothetical. To get to where we would be, and it's not a bad idea to have, a titular head with, great distinction and, a tangential and occasional relationship with a mighty institute with enormous surpluses and a hugely effective team. To get to that point will require massive change. So all I'm offering is, you know, if you want a candidate who is understanding of and capable of beginning the change, that would be, in my vote, in my view, me. I would understand completely that it's not in the gift of one president, one term, one person to deliver that change. It requires an enormous process through years and through the organisation. So, you know, I don't think it's in the gift of one man, great or otherwise.
Okay.
Tim, I'm sorry, I have to come back on that for Ben to summarise the two other candidates as average. I think is wrong. I think
You're superlative, Alan, in every way.
I think that's unfair. I think what
No. You can't have it both ways.
the electorate have to judge that for themselves as to how on past history and so on. So I would suggest that the voters look at the websites and they can see what people have achieved, and then they can decide. I must admit, I was on the phone with an architect who's now he was the director of Vectorfoil. He now owns a boatyard and so on, and he's in his 60s, and the way he thinks is actually, I will be still going in another 20 years. I want to actually still have plenty to achieve. And
I advise you go and look at websites and judge how good these architects are for themselves. Drew.
Because I want to have an idea about how it would be in operation. I'm going to just pose a scenario to you. You become president, and it's your first chance to brief the senior staff, who are the officers of the RIBA, and they've asked you to sum up what your presidency is going to look like. How would you begin?
Hold it together, your thoughts.
it's what you would call the elevator pitch.
Just my thing is, what I'm going to say is, what I've heard is that I know two of you personally, I've got a great respect for you, and I know your track record. What I would say is, what I've heard a lot about is almost an existential crisis of what the profession is. And if I almost think about the other profession I'm a member of, because I'm a chartered town planner, they had similar questions to answer in the 1950s. They had questions about when people should enter the profession, should it be through intermediate exams, should it be through full membership. They had questions big question asked about research, how influence should they and professional gender be around research. And what effectively happened in that scenario was, and Cyril can correct me if I'm wrong, but what happened in that scenario was the old profession, who would essentially be architect, engineers, surveyors, went, and they were essentially replaced with very intellectual, very able sociologists, geographers, etc. who could all identify the problems but couldn't necessarily address them.
Thanks, Drew. It's a really good question. We've got about 12 minutes before our sort of advertised time is up. So I think the question is, you've been elected, you're in the forum in 76 Portland Place, you're about to pitch to the staff what your presidency is going to mean to you, to them, and to the membership, and you've been given 2 minutes.
It's one.
Ben.
Well, it's going to be about change, and there is a necessity to restructure, and that's driven by the financial realities, because I'm sorry to say that the way the organisation has been managed has left this black hole to which I refer. But don't worry, because change is the only constant, to quote Lord Foster, and it's a necessity. And as long as we're clear and we have a vision and we understand how to achieve the process of change, and that's about being clear about our purpose, it's about being clear and articulating our culture, and by prosecuting a consistent process of change that outlasts and extends beyond one individual, one term, and continues into the future.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Cool. It is, to have 1 minute, let's say. I think there's a lot of nervousness in the staff of the RIBA at the moment. There's been good work started, and it is about actually building on that good work. It's about not throwing all that out and starting again. There's a lot of uncertainty about about salary, about position, and so on, and about the relevance of the RIBA. And it is about helping the staff understand the architects and the members that they are supporting. It's about helping them sort of see how to help achieve the actual advancing architecture program that's been agreed, and for their good, and for the good, and to see the impact that can be achieved. And it'll be a journey, and I think it will be a wonderful journey.
Okay, thanks all.
I would say staff should be valued, that the staff they have are an extremely valuable asset, and it's about leadership. And I don't go with, they've had something like 3 reorganisations in the last 8 years. I don't think I want to live in a Marxist system where we have constant revolution. One revolution and evolution following that for the next 10 years would be enough. I don't want to see constant revolution and upheaval. You won't get the best out of the staff by giving them constant uncertainty. It's also an expensive, London is also an expensive place. So they are going to be on quite tight remuneration. Getting good staff under those circumstances is quite difficult. They're not high payers on a lot of grades. So it's about valuing staff, and I'd be saying that what we need to do is work together on an evolutionary progressive route. We need to go with the vision. We need to get the best out of our staff by giving good leadership and being supportive of both staff and of the members, and making sure that we all work together as a team, and that they respect the membership and add their contribution as well as the membership respecting the staff and their contribution. It is a supportive process, and it is an iterative process towards the goals that we want to achieve.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we're going to wrap up now. So what I said I'd return to the, if you're president, what can you do about this? What I'm going to suggest is that you give us 3 words which characterise the nature of the action that you would take as president. So when you're elected, you come into post, what are the 3 watchwords for your presidential action? Ben.
Champion architects, allow them to be the voice of the profession.
Sorry, Chair, how many words is it?
All right, champion, voice. Trouble is, just a single word doesn't mean very much, but anyway. And reverse the culture so that it's not the architects and the profession supporting the institute, it's the institute supporting practices and practitioners.
Thanks, Ben. It's a hard thing to be put on the spot. 3 words. Alan.
I would say it has to be about, 3 words: inclusive and global and about architecture.
Okay, thank you.
I'd say connect, innovate, and support.